Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that a puzzler is someone who creates or solves puzzles? Learn about the first jigsaw puzzle that was invented by an engraver and map maker in 1767. Realize how being a puzzler can develop good hand and eye coordination, motor skills, better memory, problem solving, shape recognition, and stimulate the brain, all while having fun.
So today we're doing something a little different.
We're stepping away from the screens.
Yeah, ignoring the notifications, putting the phone on silent, and, clearing off the kitchen table to dump out a box of cardboard pieces.
Which is ironically what a huge number of people are doing right now. We are talking about puzzles.
We are, and I know the first reaction might be, really? Jigsaw puzzles?
Isn't that just for rainy days at the cottage?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll admit, that was sort of my first thought. I was picturing, kittens in baskets or those generic photos of the Bavarian Alps.
Sure.
But then I looked at the research stack we have for today, and it is surprisingly heavy. We're not just looking at a toy here.
Oh, not even close.
Right.
We're looking at economic theory, the history of imperialism, structural engineering, neuroscience, and even a little bit of theology. The sources really push back hard against this idea that puzzles are just a way to kill time.
That was the big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
Puzzles aren't about passing time. They're about managing chaos. But okay, before we get into the heavy stuff, the depression brain science, we have to start with the word itself.
Yes.
The etymology is the first hook in the material.
It is, and it sets the stage perfectly. Where do you even think the word puzzle comes from?
Well, I assumed it was something related to piece or maybe picture, something about fitting things together.
You'd think so, right? But the sources trace it back to this Old English word, puslium.
Puslium.
Yeah, which meant to bewilder or confound.
To confound, that sounds almost aggressive.
It does, doesn't it? But it really speaks to the original intent. A puzzle is a challenge to your mind. It's this deliberate choice to be confused just so you can find your way out of it.
So, while today is technically National Puzzle Day, what we're really celebrating isn't the cardboard.
It's the bewildering.
That is a fantastic setup.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to figure out why we like that feeling. Why, in a world of VR headsets and endless social media, do we still get this primal satisfaction from 1,000 scattered pieces?
And the answer, it turns out, takes us through a pretty wild history. We've got tragic inventors, a counterintuitive economic boom,
And Cold War-era architecture.
Okay.
Let's start the deep dive with the history. The sources mention ancient roots, like labyrinth drawings in Egypt.
Right.
But the jigsaw puzzle, as we know it, is much, much newer. It's actually a child of the Enlightenment, isn't it?
It is. We have to go to London, 1767, and we need to meet a man named John Spilsbury.
Who, and I was surprised to learn this, was not a toy maker.
No, and that is the critical detail. Spilsbury was a map maker, an engraver. You have to remember the context here. It's 1767.
The British Empire is expanding.
Exactly. The world is being charted. Maps were serious political business.
So he wasn't trying to make a game for kids.
Not at all. He had an idea for an educational aid. He took a map, he pasted it onto a piece of hardwood, probably mahogany, and then he used a fine saw to cut along the borders of the countries.
Which is where the term dissected maps comes from.
Precisely. It was a teaching tool. The idea was that if the children of the aristocracy, the boys who would grow up to run the empire, could physically place the colonies where they belonged,
They'd learn the geography of power much faster.
that's it. It's a bit ironic the ancestor of this relaxing hobby was basically a geography test for future imperialists.
And it was expensive.
Incredibly expensive. But there's a sad footnote in the sources about Spilsbury himself.
Yeah, he didn't live to see what this became, did he?
He died at 30 years old.
Wow.
He passed away thinking he'd just made a clever classroom aid for rich kids. He had no idea he'd just birthed a global industry.
But that industry didn't explode right away. The sources call this next period, up until the early 1900s, the luxury era.
Right. For over a century, these were elite status symbols. The materials were expensive, hand-cut by artisans. I mean, if we look at the data from 1908...
Yeah, that was a key benchmark in our research.
A standard 500-piece puzzle cost $5.
Which, doesn't sound like much. $5 is a coffee today. But the deep dive notes give us that inflation context.
And it's staggering. In 1908, the average monthly wage for a worker was only $50.
So, wait, that's 10% of your entire monthly income?
10% on a puzzle.
Just
Yeah,
imagine spending $400 or $500 today on a single jigsaw puzzle.
exactly. You wouldn't give that to a child. You'd put it on a velvet table in the parlor. It wasn't a toy. It was a flex. It showed you had money and leisure time.
So how did it go from elite flex to, well, in every household?
Mass production, and specifically the entrance of Parker Brothers. Around 1909, they jumped into the market with what they called pastime puzzles.
And they made some key changes, right?
Two big ones. They introduced the interlocking pieces we all know today, but they also added what they called figure pieces.
Oh, I've seen these in vintage puzzles. Explain what that is.
So imagine you're doing a puzzle of a forest. Instead of just random shapes, some of the pieces themselves would be cut into the shape of, say, a bird or a dog.
It adds a little bit of whimsy to it.
A lot of whimsy.
Mhm.
It moved the product from geography lesson to leisure activity, and the sources say this pivot was absolute.
It was an all-in bet.
It was. Parker Brothers actually stopped production on almost all of their other games for nearly 2 decades.
Wow.
They turned their entire factory into a puzzle factory.
That's a massive risk.
But it paid off.
It did. But the real explosion, and this is a part of the research I found the most counterintuitive, happened when the economy crashed.
The Great Depression.
1929. The market collapses. Unemployment skyrockets. Logic says the luxury toy market should just vanish.
Right. If you can't buy bread, you are not buying a puzzle. And yet, the opposite happened. Between 1929 and 1933, puzzle sales hit 10 million per week.
10 million a week. In the middle of the Depression, that feels like a typo in the data.
It's accurate, and the sources explain why. It comes down to what you could call escapism economics. First, manufacturers switched to cheap cardboard, so the price plummeted.
Okay, that makes sense.
But psychologically, people were desperate for a sense of control.
I see where you're going with this. The world is falling apart. You've lost your job. You can't feed your family. Everything is chaos.
Exactly. But here on your cable is a box of chaos that you can control. You can organize it. You can solve it.
It gave you a sense of order when the real world had none.
And it took hours. It was the cheapest entertainment per hour you could find.
The notes also mention this really fascinating gig economy that sprang up.
Yes, this is my favorite detail. You had all these skilled laborers out of work. Architects, carpenters, cabinet makers.
They had the tools at home, but no jobs.
Exactly. They had scroll saws. So they started cutting puzzles in their basements and garages and selling them.
So the puzzle you bought in 1932 might have been hand-cut by your unemployed neighbor.
Very likely. It became this huge cottage industry. And because money was so tight, we saw the birth of the puzzle rental market.
Which sounds so bizarre today, renting a puzzle.
It was like the blockbuster video of the 1930s. You'd go to the drugstore or the library, pay 3 to 10 cents a day, take a puzzle home, solve it, and bring it back.
It democratized the whole thing.
It did. You didn't need to own it. You just needed the experience of solving it.
That's a crucial distinction. The value wasn't the object, it was the activity.
Precisely. It cemented the puzzle as a survival mechanism for the American mind. It kept people sane.
Okay, so we've established the jigsaw, but the deep dive covers puzzles in a broader sense. So we have to jump forward to the 1970s.
The cube.
The Rubik's Cube. And this feels like a callback to Spilsbury, because Erno Rubik wasn't trying to make a toy either, was he?
No, history repeats itself. Rubik was a professor of architecture in Budapest. He wasn't thinking about toy stores. He was interested in structural problems.
What was the specific problem he was trying to solve?
It was a problem of structural engineering. He wanted to create a 3D object where the individual parts could move independently without the whole thing falling apart.
How do you hold the center together while the sides rotate freely?
Exactly. The cube was a teaching tool for spatial relationships. He built it to show his students how geometry works in 3 dimensions. The fact that you could scramble the colors and solve it, that was just a byproduct.
It's fascinating that the two most iconic puzzles in history were both accidental discoveries by educators.
It suggests the best puzzles aren't designed just to be tricky. They emerge from the fundamental nature of the world. Geography is a puzzle. Geometry is a puzzle.
We just gamified them.
Yeah.
The sources also touch on other categories like logic puzzles, Sudoku.
Right, which operates on a completely different neural pathway.
Hmm.
Jigsaws are visual and spatial. Sudoku is pure deduction. It's top-down processing. If a 7 is here, it can't be there.
They mentioned Bodhi MS too.
Yeah, the order of operations puzzles, those are about rule following. So you've got pattern recognition, mechanics, and pure logic. They're like different gyms for the brain.
Which brings us to the why. We know the history, we know the types, but what is actually happening in our brains?
Okay, so the neuroscience section is pretty dense, but the takeaways are powerful. And it explains that weird sense of calm satisfaction when you lock a piece in place.
The click.
The click. That's a dopamine hit. Every time you fit a piece, your brain releases a tiny amount of dopamine. It's a reward signal. Good job. Do it again.
A positive feedback loop.
Exactly. But unlike, say, social media scrolling, which is also a dopamine loop, puzzles engage what's called visuospatial reasoning. You're exercising your working memory.
And for kids, this is developmental motor skills, shape recognition. But for adults?
For adults, it's maintenance, neuroprotection. The sources cite studies showing that doing these kinds of cognitive exercises can improve short-term memory and even delay cognitive decline.
There's a social aspect mentioned too. The difference between solving one alone versus with someone else.
Yes. Solo puzzling is meditative. But cooperative puzzling, working on a board with a spouse or a friend, that triggers different benefits. It lowers stress levels significantly because you're working toward a shared, non-competitive goal.
Which is pretty rare in adult life, isn't it?
It really is. In a puzzle, you're both on the same team against the chaos of the pile.
However, I have to bring up what you called the dark side, the bleary-eyed puzzler.
The just one more piece syndrome.
I've been there. It is 2 a.m, my back hurts, my eyes are dry, but I cannot go to bed until I finish the sky. Is that healthy? Or is it just an obsession?
It's actually a documented psychological phenomenon called the Zeigarnik effect.
The what now?
The Zeigarnik effect. It states that our brains remember uncompleted tasks much better than completed ones.
The brain hates an open loop.
It hates it. That unfinished sky creates cognitive tension. You stay up until 2 a.m. because your brain literally cannot rest until it closes that loop.
That explains so much. It's not just stubbornness. It's a biological compulsion for closure.
And that compulsion is what makes it such a great metaphor for life.
Which brings us to the final section of our deep dive. The philosophy of it all.
They do. They move from the mechanics of the brain to the mechanics of the soul, in a way.
The sources make this comparison between a puzzle and unsolvable life problems.
Right. The experience of the stuck piece. We've all done it. You have a piece, the colors are right, it looks like it should fit, so you push, you try to jam it in.
And you end up peeling the cardboard or bending the piece.
You ruin it. The lesson the puzzle teaches is don't force it. If you have to force it, it's the wrong fit.
That is painfully applicable to almost everything.
It is. But the source goes further. It asks, what do you do when you just can't find the piece? When you're truly stuck?
The strategy is to just stop.
Step back. Ponder. Look at the whole picture instead of obsessing over the one empty space.
And this is where the material brings in a specific spiritual concept.
Yes, it quotes from the Doctrine and Covenants, specifically section 88.
And, regardless of the listener's background, the principle here is what's so interesting. It talks about seeking guidance and the promise that answers come in his own time and in his own way.
In his own time. That's the friction point for us. We want the answer now. We want the puzzle finished now.
We want to Google the solution.
Exactly. But the argument here is that the value isn't actually in the finished image. The value is in the waiting. It's in the trust that the piece exists, even if you can't see it yet.
So if we just look at the practice itself, it's about training patience.
It's about sitting with uncertainty. And that is a skill we are losing. A puzzle forces you to sit with that hole in the picture and trust that if you keep looking, the piece will appear.
It reframes what it means to be a puzzler.
It's an active identity. You aren't just consuming something. You are actively restoring order.
I love that. Restoring order.
Think about the journey we just covered. Spilsbury wanted to teach us where things are, the order of the map.
Rubik wanted to teach us how things move, the order of the structure.
And the Great Depression puzzlers used it to find order in economic chaos.
And today, maybe we use it to find order in digital chaos.
I think that's the strongest argument for it. In a world of instant gratification, doing a puzzle is an act of rebellion. You are choosing the slow path.
It's anti-efficiency.
And that is exactly why it's so healing. It forces you to single task in a multitasking world.
So let's wrap this up. We've gone from mahogany maps for the rich to 10-cent rentals for the unemployed to dopamine loops and spiritual patience.
It turns out there's a lot more in that cardboard box than we thought.
If the listener takes one thing away from this deep dive, what should it be?
I would say embrace the bewilderment.
The Puslian.
The Puslian.
Yeah.
If you feel confused or overwhelmed, don't try to force the pieces. Sit with it, sort the edges, look for the patterns. The pieces are all there. You just have to slow down enough to see them.
Yeah, and maybe the goal isn't just to finish the puzzle.
The goal is the quiet you find while you're doing it.
That is a perfect place to leave it. So whether you are a bleary-eyed obsessive or someone who hasn't touched a jigsaw in years, maybe this week is the time to open a box.
Clear off the table.
Clear off the table.
Thank you for joining us for this day in His story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in His story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.